All right, let's do this. Peanut, if you're staying in the room, no talking. Hello and welcome to the PhotoWork podcast, the talky and touchy-feely version of my book, PhotoWork, 40 Photographers on Process and Practice. Hello, everyone. I'm Sasha Wolf, recording from Woodstock, New York, and joined as usual, even though you might not know it because he's being so quiet.
I'm behaving.
He's there. There he is. Mr. Michael Chauvin Dalton. Hello, Michael.
Hi. Yeah, I thought I'd try not cutting in early.
It was. I thought maybe I'd lost you. Got nervous. How are you?
Oh, doing well. Yeah, finishing up some teaching and just sitting in my office now. And it was critique day, which is always the best day because it's the culmination of everything you've been working on. So. Doing my bit to keep everyone going and motivated.
Wait, so you were doing critiques today?
Oh, yeah. I just did 5 hours of critiques. Yes.
And that doesn't feel fraught to you?
I am exhausted.
Yeah. You were like, it's such a great day. It's like, God, critiquing all day is so draining.
It really, mentally, if you're doing it right, it's mentally and emotionally exhausting.
It is.
And it's very early on with an intro kind of photo class, so you're doing most of the work at this point,
right? Yeah, you're teaching.
And it's really about
teaching.
Yeah, exactly. And motivating and giving students good feedback without killing them,
without crushing their dreams.
Exactly.
That's the first no.
It's too early.
No dream crushing.
Too early for that. Next year.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Well, I just got back from Chicago where I was, of course, reviewing, critiquing.
Filter Photo.
Yes, big shout out to Filter Photo and the Filter Photo Festival. As usual, it was a joy, an exhausting joy. But I love those guys. Particular shout out to Erin Hoyt, who took over the executive director position from Jennifer Murray, who did an incredible job for many, many years, got Filter to where it is. And this was Erin's first year of being fully in charge of the festival. And Erin, if you're listening, I think that you did an amazing job. And
oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, wonderful people. I really love, it's in Chicago, and really love participating. And there's always so many great friends and colleagues to see. Raheem Fortune was there doing a workshop and an artist talk. Carolyn Drake, Aspen Mays, Clint Woodside, Catherine Opie was the keynote speaker. Got to spend some time with Kathy, which was lovely.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, just a lot of saw friends. Karen Irvine, wonderful curator from the Museum of Contemporary Photography, Chicago, and Kelly Connell, Gregory Harris. Oh, all sorts of fantastic people. And,
absolutely. Oh my God.
And saw some great work, and that was really wonderful. So yeah, Filter Photo. Much love for Filter. And Michael, I know you have some stuff to report from our wonderful sponsors, Picture House and the Small Darkroom. Do tell.
So on October 5th, Ruth Lauer-Menenti will be speaking about I Imagined It Empty, published by Editorial RM. And Courtney Allen will be speaking about Splendor, published by Deadbeat Club. And they will be in conversation with each other. That's October 5th. And then on October 26th, Matthew Genetempo will be talking about Dog Breath, published by Trespasser. And both of these events should be in the evening. Most of the events at Picture House run around 6 o'clock, so just check them out, phtsdr.com. You can find the times there. And make sure you RSVP because they fill fast.
When is Matthew's talk?
Matthew's is October 26th, because I want to try to go to that one, too.
I mean, of course, we want to support everyone, but being human beings that we are, it's always tempting to go see a friend.
Yes. I would be happy to make both of them. I can't always make all of them, that's for sure.
Yes. Yep. Well, I have an announcement also, which is that our application period opened for the next round of the PhotoWork Foundation Fellowship.
Yeah.
So please go to the photowork.foundation for more information. I think it's open until October 15th, the application period. And I know we've already gotten a lot of applications because Taylor told me we did. But there's no limit to the amount of applications. So please apply. And, we have amazing mentor pool. We had amazing mentors last session and we're just ramping up. So,
and this is all connected to Picture House too, because none of this would be happening without Picture House. And in this episode that you are about to hear, you will hear just how important Picture House was to this first round.
Yeah, absolutely. They are such fantastic friends and supporters of the foundation. We're eternally grateful, truly. And yeah, I think it's lovely. Did we even mention what this episode is today? We didn't. So
just through the back door we have now.
All professionalism.
That's right.
Flushed down the toilet. Thought we were doing so well. So today's episode is a conversation with the fellows, the 2024
the inaugural
fellows.
fellowship.
Yeah. So Molly Darcy, Brandon Holland, and Will Suter were my guests today, and it's a really wonderful conversation, and I know they're not famous artists like some of our guests. But,
not yet.
But please listen because there's, a lot of information in this conversation about process. And
I think there's incredible value to hearing someone's transformation as it's happening. And that's what happens to these folks.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And yeah, I found it very moving. And I think, obviously I'm biased, but I loved talking to them and hearing. I've obviously talked to all of them, maybe not obviously, but I have talked to all of them since their fellowship period ended, although they're fellows forever. But it was, even more, I learned more in this conversation.
Molly was paired with Andrea Modica, Brandon was paired with Doug Dubois, and Will was paired with Christine Potter. They all talk about their experiences. And what you learn from the other side through them is just how generous those mentors were.
Yeah, it's really incredible.
We know they're wonderful people personally, but that was really, really nice to hear.
Yeah, without a doubt. No, so much gratitude to those three stellar human beings. I mean, we chose them to be the first mentors because, I knew that they would take such good care of our fellows. They're all professors. They're all deeply caring and empathetic people. And they're all great artists. So the trifecta. What more could you ask for?
Absolutely.
Well, anyway, Michael, why don't we get to it then? If you don't mind, please take it away.
My pleasure. And here's your conversation with Molly Darcy, Brandon Holland, and Will Suter.
Molly Darcy, Brandon Holland, Will Suter, welcome to the PhotoWork podcast. Thank you all so much for being here. I've really been looking forward to talking with all of you. So welcome. Good morning to all.
Morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sasha. Good morning.
So we're actually sort of spread out around the country. Molly, are you in the city or are you in Massachusetts or
right now I'm in Portland, Maine.
You're in Portland, Maine, and Brandon you're in New Orleans, right, Brandon?
Correct. Yes, I'm in New Orleans.
Some bad weather on the horizon, and Will is out in California, Northern California, right?
Yeah,
Will?
I'm in Humboldt County, which is almost as far north in California as you can go before you get to the Oregon border.
So we're appropriately spread out representing. So you three were the PhotoWork Foundation's first group of fellows, which is so exciting. And I'm on a personal note, I love you guys. I'm super proud of all of you. And I couldn't be happier that you three were our first group and that have the chance to get to know all three of you and have you in the PhotoWork family. It's just been such an incredible joy for me personally to, get to this point in my life and career in the photography world where I could, start the foundation and within a year be connected to 3 people as wonderful as you 3. So it's just, I sort of, the proverbial, I pinch myself. I feel so lucky. So,
well, right back at you.
Well,
Really
thank you, Will.
I know, it's so reciprocated.
So you guys, we finished up your fellowship period in July. It's now beginning of September, and I wanted to talk to you 3 about the fellowship. And as I told you when we all spoke a few weeks ago, this isn't meant to be an advertisement for the fellowship. It's really, I just think it would be wonderful to hear from you all about the journey you took, because whatever journey you took with your mentors over your 6-month fellowship period, is a journey that other artists will be going through, whether they're in school or whether they're working with one colleague or friend or critique group or, whatever it is. The podcast is always about process and the process of making art, of being a photographer, and the ups and downs and ways of getting through what can be a very challenging path. So let's just talk a little bit about what the fellowship was and how it unfolded for you all. Molly, do you want to start?
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you so much. I met with Andrea Modica. We met once a month, and Andrea is amazing, and she's fiery and personal and kind and vulnerable, and shared so much of her own process and her own career and journey with photography, which made it so rich and enjoyable. And the way we worked was, I think our first meeting, we went back on some of my past work, but that was pretty much it. Like from every month moving on, I made entirely new work each month and brought it to her and had really open dialogue about what I was doing and why I was doing it, and also technical help. So Andrea was amazing in offering technical support and critiquing composition and my lighting choices and where I was standing. And that was like invaluable to me because I'd never had so much one-on-one time with someone looking at specific images. It was just completely altered the way that I was shooting and what I was looking for and how I was doing it and why I was doing it. And it was everything she brought and the motivation I felt to continually make new work and have something to show each month. I think the format of the fellowship was really conducive to creating something very new and like sort of pushing boundaries of a practice that I've been maintaining for many years, but had maybe fallen into a little bit of a rut with, I think. So overall, it just like brought a whole new energy to what I'm doing. And so much of it is attributed to Andrea and how amazing she is and how much she gave to all of our meetings. And yeah, it was just such a perfect way, I think, outside of institution or a school to keep up an artistic practice in a way that was challenging, but also really enjoyable.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And Molly, can you tell folks, and Brandon, will I'll ask you the same thing. Just tell folks a little bit about how you got into photography and that journey to where you are.
Yeah, for me, I think my journey to photography was a really interesting combination of both being part of like a digital native generation, but also having access and exposure to a darkroom from a young age. So it was like both of these disparate things sort of combined, where at the age of 12, I was witnessing people posting on Flickr and YouTube, and they were super young also and using cameras. And people were looking at their work, but then also my mom had like a really strong, smart intuition to send me to a darkroom camp for a week, which was like...
Oh my God, that's amazing. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
It was like deeply impactful and foundational to what I was seeing online, but then also experiencing in a darkroom. And from then it was like a lot of just like really helpful support from my parents. Like, and I attribute a lot to their intuition. To like, my dad went to the store with me to buy a camera and like helped me go to school that had a darkroom, and it was just a lot of like really helpful steps along the way. I think it's not easy to end up. There's so many things working against being an artist, I think. And so anything that's supportive of that is such a gift. And especially from a young age, there's all these barriers we can hit. And so to just every step of the way, I feel like I'm always gifted like the presence of other photographers, an opportunity to look at books and look at work. And for me, that it's just like such a blessing to be able to continue to do it. I've always been like very visually oriented, and also with photography, I think what happens is you realize it's like an amazing medium in the way that it improves your life. You get to not only express yourself, but also have reasons to meet people and to drive around and to expose yourself to new scenarios. And it's supportive in that way also. And for me, that manifests very strongly in portraiture and is something that I feel enriches my life so much. Yeah, so it started from a really young age, like 12 or so, and then every step along the way, there's somehow been support for me to keep doing it, and I'm really grateful. Now I'm in a place where I sort of shoot a combination of film and digital. Like I went to the store the other day to get some color film, and it was $84, and I was just like hit a new place. Yikes! Yeah, so it's a little bit of making it work in this day and age when things are really rapidly changing. But yeah, that's a little bit about how I started.
Thank you. That's really wonderful journey. And Brandon, let's move on to you. If you could tell us about your journey in making pictures, and then about the process of working with Doug Dubois, your mentor.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I came to photography in a way that is probably becoming more common now, which is honestly Instagram. I worked in film. I still do. That was my main interest is film and filmmaking, which is still a visual, but honestly, photography just was not on my radar at all. And somehow I stumbled across Teju Cole's Instagram, and I don't know how. I definitely wasn't following his photography. Maybe I was following his writing at the time. But he kind of became my first teacher, because he writes so much about photography. And so that really opened up the world for me. And so from there, I reached out to a couple of people that I followed on Instagram and just asked them, like, what camera do you use? How does your picture look like this? And then
That's awesome.
And I went off of their suggestions and started doing this thing really as a hobby, as something to do in my off time when I wasn't working in film. And it just, over time, it became much more than a hobby. I think it reaches a certain point where there's so much time and thought going into this that it became a much more important thing in my life. But that's all still very recent.
And tell me about working with Doug and what that process was like.
Yeah, I met with Doug. I would say our first meeting was similar to Molly's in that we went over some of my older work from the past couple of months and what I had submitted for the application. And we talked a lot that first session. It was a really long first session. We got to know each other and just talked about tastes and influences and what I was hoping to do over the next couple of months. And then from there, I would say, he was so available to me. I can't say, I think we probably met more than once a month. But basically, I had this folder online that I would just continuously upload new work to. And then we would meet every so often and go over that work. And I would ask him questions about his career, career paths, navigating the photography world. We talked a lot about universities. We talked a lot about his forays into editorial work. We talked about how some of his projects formed. And he told me a lot of stories about just when things didn't go according to plan and how he made it work. And that was incredibly important and informative just instilling and envisioning, this mentality of like, make it work, like make it happen. I would say that, there was a portion of the fellowship where things were not flowing, which I think is, I mean, I'm sure it's a pretty common thing, but, especially during what is already like a brief moment in time where there's some extra attention on me, that was a new experience for me to have this period where I'm having trouble making work and there is some sort of expectation. And so he was incredibly helpful with guiding me through that, very supportive, and it opened up the way that I make work in a really grand way. Because I think before this, I would kind of just wander around, and if something presented itself to me, then that's great. But if not, then it's not a problem either. And what I learned is a lot of different strategies to just put myself in situations where I can be presented with pictures. So, really, really changing how I approach. I started directly contacting people, directly getting in touch with different community groups, and sometimes going out almost like I'm doing an editorial assignment. Which I think I was hesitant to do before, because in my head I thought, well, if I go out with the mentality of doing an editorial assignment, then I will make editorial work. But the truth is, it's the context. So the photographs exist on their own, and you, by how you use them, how you contextualize them, is really where the nature of the photograph comes from. And also, even more so than that, a huge lesson I learned is just, you don't make the photographs, they're presented to you. So I had to just drop my idea of what I'm going out to make, basically. So it became just, the real work is being very thoughtful and diligent with putting myself in scenarios where pictures can happen, more so than going out thinking, I'm going to make this picture or I'm going to make that picture. Those are given to you. all you have to do is be receptive. So that was a really big breakthrough for me. And Doug is so knowledgeable about the history of photographer. He knows every photographer, and he's so technically knowledgeable too. He was, I don't know if he would call himself a master printer, but from what he's told me, he had such extensive printing experience and printing for...
Yeah, he makes beautiful prints.
He makes beautiful prints himself. He's printed for a lot of very prominent photographers. And I'm someone who came to photography really experiencing it through a screen. And I may have printed, inkjet prints here and there for myself, but for the most part, my experience was taking a photo in on a screen. And that influences the kind of photos you make. It influences how you look at the photos. It influences how you edit photos. And so Doug was really good about tuning my eye to the print and really the post-processing aspect of photography. And he was really integral in shaping my time with Picture House, which was a huge part of the fellowship. I was able to go to Picture House in person. So this is another thing. I started applying to things because I wanted to get into a show. I'd never been in a show before and printed for exhibition. So Doug very sweetly went through culling through photos 4 hours and editing down a sequence to send off for applications. And so I had...
That's wonderful.
Yeah, that in itself was definitely very eye-opening, just to see how his mind works with regards to sequencing and editing photos, which he is. I mean, he's a master of sequencing, and he takes it.
I concur.
So seriously. His books are perfect, and it shows, because he spends so much time doing it. And going through his binders and his strategies for how he works through a large sequence. That was incredibly helpful. So I did get into a show in Atlanta with the Atlanta Photography Group, and I was able to go to Picture House in person, meet with the entire team, sit down with them, and take, I think it ended up being 9 prints from the negative to the print, and go through the post-processing and the papers and the printing and the framing, things that I'd never done before. I learned so much so quickly, and they were so kind and so generous with their knowledge. It was so much fun. That's
awesome.
For anyone, applying this year. No, that's such a huge perk, especially if you're close to Picture House and you can go in person. They're just such a great team of people who really care about photography, and it shows.
Well, I'm so glad you're saying that, because for anyone out there who thinks that we just rattle off our thanks to Picture House in the beginning of every podcast for the sake of it, or that what we're saying we don't believe, we do. We love them. And as you're saying, they really are such generous sponsors of the foundation and the fellowship, and they really believe in it and give it their all. So it's wonderful to hear you say that.
Yes, they are the real deal, for sure.
Yeah.
So I was able to do that, and that went incredibly well. It was stressful, but in a very good way. Definitely pushing me outside of my comfort zone. Definitely learning a lot of things that I didn't know I was lacking in. Becoming aware of things that I didn't know I didn't have the knowledge of.
Right. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, so that was incredibly enriching. And also to build on that, a huge learning lesson for me through this was just really considering how much help you need to be successful in any of these endeavors. Just how many people are involved in the process. And that was something that I grew a lot in, being receptive to reaching out to people and learning where I can ask for help. And Doug, my partner, Nicole, my family, my photographer friends in New Orleans, and everyone at Picture House. I mean, there's just so much knowledge, and there's a lot of people that care about you and that can help you make whatever you're making a lot better. And not only is it, and it's actually a necessity. And I think
I concur.
Maybe that's something that can get lost in the weeds when you consider, a prominent artist or photographer is just the amount of people that are helping them in every aspect of their life, and how important that is to your success, is having a big network of very supportive people that can help you and that are going to know lots of things that you don't know. Well,
I completely agree, which is basically you just laid out the mission statement for the foundation. So thank you very much. And I'll just say that, by the way, running the foundation is a team effort. And, we're always bringing in new people and other people with expertise to help us run the foundation and make the right decisions. Everything you have to be able to ask for help or you will not achieve. Will, why don't you tell us about your coming to photography and your experience? I'll just say the three of you had great mentors, all of them professors, and we were very careful in not only choosing our mentors, but pairing them with the three of you. And I think it worked out really well. Will, you had Christine Potter. But anyway, why don't you tell us about yourself and your experience?
Thanks, Sasha. Yeah, that's funny. Both Molly and Brandon mentioned Instagram, and that's also been a pretty driving force of how I got into photography. I think I was probably about 13 or 14, and this was back when Instagram was just photos and they were all squares. And I started out with just like this dinky little cell phone camera that was like, I think 3 megapixels or something like that. Just going on walks around my neighborhood and taking like these kind of silly oversaturated pictures of flowers. And it just kind of became this way for me to I guess, engage with the world and kind of observe stuff. I'm a very like observational person, I guess. I like looking at little details and stuff like that. And then I think I was probably about 14 or 15 when my dad gave me his old 35 millimeter SLR, and I was playing with that. And I remember specifically the first 2 rolls of film that I shot with it were like expired black and white C41 film that was like on clearance at a drugstore.
Now you know why.
Yeah. And that was like a whole different experience. And it really like just, I think, kind of engaged me in a different and much deeper way with it. And that sort of led to me, I think I got off Craigslist for like $40 an enlarger and a bunch of tanks and trays and all the good darkroom stuff. And I would like tape trash bags over my bathroom windows and like be printing on the floor. And it was just, a really creative escape for me. I would, be locked in there till like 2 a.m. sometimes. Probably was not the healthiest thing. There was like very little ventilation and all those lovely darkroom chemicals.
Experienced that.
Yeah. And I just loved both the technical side of it, like the kind of tactility and engagement with all the clicky little dials and that kind of thing. Actually, it's funny too. I have a distinct memory of like, I think before I even had a cell phone camera, I took apart a disposable camera to see how it worked and like shocked myself on the flash capacitor and my arm was like numb for an hour. So I was really interested in the technical side of it and kind of the gear and stuff. And then it slowly became more like an engagement with the process of like going out looking for photos. I would love to get up really early and go up into the hills around my house and just like nature kind of stuff. And then, I think that engagement with it kind of deepened and I got a lot more interested in finding new things to photograph. But I think it was sort of the same thing as what Molly and Brandon said, is like, I kind of was in a rut almost, or just kind of circling back to the same subject matter, same approaches and stuff like that. So during the fellowship, I worked with Christine Potter, who was just an incredible mentor and really so supportive and critical at the same time, which was a really, really cool combination.
Yeah.
So interesting. I learned so much. Just like having that other set of eyes and the objectivity that comes with that is really such a incredible asset to learning and developing kind of my own approach. She was just so motivating and patient and encouraging and insightful. My work and kind of my goals were just sort of all over the place. And she really helped so much with, helping me kind of narrow down what I wanted to do and achieve some clarity and direction in my work. And it was really like, I'm still, I think, processing and realizing how much that has benefited me. So I did a little bit of both, working with old work that I would sort of consider all one body of work, and then also making new images to sort of like fill in gaps and stuff like that. And it was really neat to work with Christine. And I would say, like, to sum it up, she was incredibly helpful in helping me sort of like dissect and bridge the gaps between what I wanted the work to be and what it is, and like what I want the function of that work to be and how it, functions as I sort of presented it to her, and then finding the ways and the types of images that I could make, or, things I could find in my archive to fill in those gaps.
And she gave you, I think, and I don't know if all of you did this, but I think Christine gave you some assignments.
Yes, that was really cool.
To sort of push you in different directions. And
yeah, that was really cool too, to see, she'd give me some specific assignments in terms of, go out and photograph like 5 people or something along those lines, or photograph like a certain kind of situation. And this was all based on like, again, kind of what I would identify and she would identify as like bridging the gaps between where I wanted the work to be and where it was. And it was really interesting to see, and also, really challenging to see where, when I went out and, took that approach, where I would fail in that. And, both from that failure, I found places where it was like, okay, I want to keep pushing harder and not fail at that. And then also places where I'm like, okay, this is probably just not really the direction I want to go. It might have been the direction I thought I wanted to go, but then I realized, not really. It was really cool too to have a mentor like that and someone to learn from whose work I also really admire. And it was, obviously there's a little bit of peril in this that you can like, you don't want to just be making your teacher's work, but it was really, really helpful to me because I'm just a very kind of experiential and observational learner. Like I can learn by watching someone else doing something and learning about their process. It was really helpful to, have her work in front of me and find something about it that was really interesting to me and ask her about it.
Right. That must be an amazing, I mean, I get to do that for a living, but, it's really is exciting when, you're sort of storing up questions.
Yes.
And then you actually have the person right in front of you and you get to ask them specifically what they were thinking, how they made something. I mean, Christine has a lot of tips and tricks.
Totally.
In her work.
Yeah. And kind of same thing, it sounds like with Andrea and Molly and Brandon and Doug is like, it was really inspiring and also just very like fun to hear all of their stories. And Christine's stories about working with PL DeCorsia and all of, the printing and stuff that she was doing and kind of how she found her way and I guess retained like the motivation and engagement with photography that she has and that makes it such an amazing medium to work with.
Yep, absolutely. Do you guys have any questions for each other? It just occurred to me that instead of asking you questions, you might have some for one another.
Well, I know one thing I do want to say just while we're on the topic of Christine is just like I haven't had the chance to see Andrea's prints in person, but I saw Christine's prints at the High a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
Oh, cool.
Oh my goodness. They're incredible.
Talk about master printer. Yeah.
It was mind-blowing. Yeah. Incredibly good printer.
I really want to see the show she opened in Arkansas. That looks amazing.
Yeah. That's at the Momentary, which is part of the Crystal Bridges Museum in Bentonville, Arkansas. And it's a very big solo show that's running until, I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't, but sometime in October. And it's a phenomenal exhibition of her work, Dark Waters. Well, so
I might actually have a question for Will. I'm curious.
Go ahead, Molly.
Is my sense of your work is it's very much like nature and place based, and I'm curious if that's where you grew up, and also how the assignments weaved into that, given Christine's like her directions. Like, did you photograph people at all? It seems like your photos are very much land based and not so much portraits, and I'm curious about your philosophy on that, and also what the land and the place means to you.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that because I totally blanked and omitted that. That was a huge part of what Christine was helping me work on is like, I have a real interest in photographing people, but I'm a very like shy person for lack of a better word. And if I'm, working a job for someone doing something like that, it kind of gives me this excuse to like engage with people. And that was a huge part of this was like exploring more and building my own confidence in kind of like Brandon was saying is like reaching out to people and finding those pictures of stories and interesting people. And I did actually start making a lot more portraits during this. They are still not quite where I want them to be, so I haven't shared as much of them. But actually, funny enough, this summer for the second year, photographed this weekly local art and farmers market that is a really, really big local event. It's called Eureka Friday Night Markets. And there's about 8,000 to 10,000 people every week that show up. And this year, after working with Christine, I think the photos that I was making there of people are just so much richer and so much more where I want them to be. And I actually still have yet not shared any of that work. And this was another really cool thing to work with Christine. And I think it really, really challenged me. And I'm still kind of processing it, is like where the work that I was making, which absolutely you're right, is a lot more like land and environmental landscape kind of thing, overlaps, and the porosity between that and the pictures that I do make of people, because I think I still have a long way to go in like integrating those two. Yeah. I hope that kind of answers your question.
Totally.
Which I should say too, both of your work was like incredible to see shared during this, like the portraits you were making and the work that Brandon was making out in the community and stuff was like incredibly inspiring. And I'm really, really honored and excited to have been in this kind of cohort with you. It's really, really cool.
Likewise.
Well, we'll continue the cohort because, as you guys know, once a fellow, always a fellow. So and we are working on some Zoom gatherings with you all that we will get to you about in the next few weeks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
Exciting.
we will continue to work on your sense of community and togetherness and continue to support you all. Right now, we're a little busy because we're launching applications open for the next round of the fellowship in 3 or 4 days. So
Yes.
Taylor and I have been really busy getting all those materials together, and we're expanding, as I think you guys know, from 3 to 6 fellows, and we're going to be launching another more advanced fellowship
Exciting.
in a couple of months. So a lot going on. Well, before we go, I guess I'd just love to know from all three of you, just briefly, where your head's at now and where your picture making is right now and what you're working on. So why don't we go in opposite order? And Will, why don't we start with you?
Cool. Yeah, I really I've kind of had a fire lit under me, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
I've just felt so motivated to like weave photography back into my life in the way that I think before I was like kind of an adult out in the world on my own. It was just such a engagement for me, and I really want it to come back to that and become like kind of a way of living. And I think it's really changed for me. Like, you know, before this, I would say I would maybe go out like once a week with a camera, like, well, maybe a couple times. But now I pretty much do not leave the house without a camera on me. I've started, for better or worse, shooting a lot more digital just because it does remove that cost barrier. And I can be a lot more free with it, but still be intentional. And yeah, I'm really interested a lot more now actually in making photos that kind of tell stories about people or the characters of people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
And, you know, one of the really big takeaways from my time with Christine, and I think this was like basically paraphrasing something I think from our last meeting, was that the work that I make is always going to be mine. And I don't need to get hung up on, you know, really, really trying to almost in this convoluted way, like make it tell my story or something like that, because I can, you know, just lean into making the pictures that interest me and that I want to make. And those will always be my work and you know, my view and my perspective is going to show through there, you know, just letting the pictures be what they are. And yeah.
That's wonderful. I mean, I'm going to paraphrase you a little bit because I think that this happens to a lot of people. So I think it's useful is, you know, I think you had hit a bit of a wall.
Yes.
And I think, this is the whole point of the fellowship, is to take folks like you guys who might have been hitting a bit of a wall because you didn't have community encouragement, you didn't have someone to light a fire, help you with that, weren't quite sure, what to do next, where you were going. And I think, Will, with you particularly, that the fellowship really helped you get back to that enthusiasm and shake loose out of some shackles that you'd sort of created for yourself that needed to fall away. So you could get back to that enthusiasm that you had when you were younger. So that's really, really wonderful. Brandon, any last thoughts about where you are now and what you're working on, or whatever you want to say?
Absolutely. I think for me, the practice itself has become such an important part of my life, and
that's wonderful.
And so, I mean, even more so than the final product, just the way of moving through the world with the camera as this kind of tool that I can use to do that. Just to connect with the people around me and use it as a way of showing love to them and preserving things that are important to me and feeling a part of like a broader culture, feeling a part of like a tapestry. Yeah, just feeling like I'm contributing to something greater than just myself. So I think that it was starting to happen, and it's only gotten much stronger. Just the sense of how I'm approaching making pictures now and what I'm doing and how I feel about it. It's a lot richer, and it's a much more solid foundation for making art than I had, I would say, a year ago. So it's so much less about honing in on what I'm doing or being self-critical, and more about looking outward and connection. I've been able to start connecting to the community and to the art community in New Orleans and just my surroundings a lot more. So I feel more integrated and more supported, and it has the wheels turning of how I can navigate this and what is possible. And I think I've been able to let go of some of my ideas of what it is that I make. That's been a really important thing, is just knowing when I can just let the work flow, and I don't need to guide what I think I'm doing. Just operating from a place of love.
Well, that's good. It's a good guiding principle.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Molly?
Yeah, I would just add to both of those comments. I think for me, like the fellowship, it's something like it takes 21 days or something to build a habit. So for me, the fellowship instilled this like photography as like a habitual thing in a very positive way. Like I was going out every month shooting, and so that's just like kind of naturally continued. And I feel like I'm on this like forever project that seems to have no end, and I'll just keep doing that. And I read a lot of like Minor White's writings, and he has a quote that says, "Reaching a creative state of mind through positive action is considered preferable to waiting for inspiration." And I've really adopted that philosophy of you don't necessarily have to wait for the light to be perfect or the day to be the best. It's just like go out and shoot, and that's when the inspiration will come. And I felt I've continued to adopt that thanks to the fellowship, and I would encourage anyone to apply. And it was an amazing experience, and Sasha is the best.
Well, thank you all so much for being our first fellows, being so inspirational to all of us at the foundation, and being our excellent proof of concept so we could continue on. And just really love you guys, and so proud of you all, as I said. And thank you for being with me this morning. Will, I know it's really early for you, so go have a second cup of coffee. And Yeah, thanks so much, you guys. And we'll be in touch with you soon. And I'll see you all on Zoom in the next few weeks.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Happy birthday, Sasha.
Yeah, happy
Thank
birthday.
you.
birthday.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Love you guys.
Love you
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
PhotoWork with Sasha Wolf is a production of the PhotoWork Foundation. Executive producer is Sasha Wolf, and the associate producer is Taylor Selsback. The show is also produced and edited by me, Michael Chauvin-Dalton of Real Photo Show. Music is by J. Walter Hawks. If you like the show and wish to find out more about the Foundation, please visit photowork.foundation and be sure to subscribe and review with all the stars on your listening platform.